think I have not seen it. Wait, sir. Yeah. A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The galaxy of intellectuals, Your Excellency, invited guests, teachers, and my dear friends. On behalf of G10 Institution, I, Krishna Sonone, Head Department of Forensic Science, convener and host for today's webinar, welcomes you in the second day of international webinar series on the forensic science for society. Friends, how different is these days? Locked down by the situation and we are connected together by the webinar. To make the best use of this time during this lockdown and gain the knowledge, I thank you, all of you, for joining this webinar focusing on the topic Forensic 2050, the SpaceX movements of forensic science. We feel honored to have with us Ms. Shraddha Nyati ma'am, forensic scientist, advisor, LNCSI, Cleveland, Ohio, editor, International Journal of Applied Biology and Forensics, author from Ring to Mirror, conceptualization artist, book reviewer, Harrison, New Jersey, USA, from United States of America. The speakers of today's webinar. Ma'am, you hardly need any introduction. You have made all of us proud by your distinguished work in the field of forensic science. Ma'am did her master's in forensic science with the specialization in forensic biology, serology, and DNA. She was the silver medalist of her university. She had worked as a head of Department of Forensic Science at Government Institute of Forensic Science, Aurangabad, Maharashtra, India. She has handled cases of theft, murder, forged signature, suicide, notes, homicides, suicides, and accidental death in association with the local police. She has also trained several cadres of police department for proper investigation of crime scene. She was also nominated for Best Scientist Award at International Science Congress, Udaipur, India. She also conducts several self-paced online training courses. She is also training in gemstone analysis. She is a published author. Her book, From Ring to Mirror, was published in 2015. Her next book is under the publication as we speak. In her free time, you'll find her wrapped in a blanket, either reading or painting. She is currently working part time as an advisor at LNCSI in Cleveland, Ohio, and the editor of International Journal of Applied Biology and Forensics. I request everyone, please ask your doubts by typing the message on the screen at the end of the session and not in the middle of the session. Hope you will gain the knowledge and enjoy this session. So, without any delay, I request the ma'am to start with the session.
Thank you, Krishna. Like I would request you all not to be impressed by such a long description. I mean, I'm pretty sure had there been someone from FBI or ROD, they wouldn't require such a huge description. But anyway, thank you, Krishna, for making me look good in front of everyone. So now, before we begin this webinar, I would like you guys to answer me something. You guys can type it in the chat box. I'll be looking at the answers. How many of you believe that in future, sometime in future, there would be flying cars? Please like type down in the chats. Are there any people here who believe that there would be flying cars in the future? Believe. I am. Okay. So exactly. So that is what we are going to discuss today, not the flying cars or anything. But most of us, we believe that in future, the sky would not be just about clouds, right? There could be a lot of things. As we are talking, there could be flying cars. So today we are going to discuss about the SpaceX moments. That's the title of our webinar. So for people who do not know about SpaceX, like why I titled this webinar as SpaceX. So this is an aerospace company by Elon Musk. He recently launched a rocket called Falcon 9, and he's claiming that in coming years, he would be opening a space tourism kind of thing. So you guys would be able to go to space. I have no idea what you what you'll see in space since it's all dark. But there would be something like none of us have been there, so we cannot even say. But he's saying that in future, the space tourism would be a boom. He is designing a rocket in which like there'll be 8 people or so, and he'll take us around space for let's say 30 minutes. And the best part is everyone gets to have the window seat. So that is what the future looks like. And that is what we are going to talk today. So I welcome you all to the future of forensic science. Wait, let me just share the screen. Okay. So I'm going to show you some images right now. Oh, by the way, I will ask you questions. You will have to reply in the chat box. Like I had to get up really early in the morning for this webinar, and I'm not letting you guys sleep on me. So I'll keep asking questions. You'll keep answering me so that it's an interactive kind of webinar. Cool. So now I'm going to show you some images. These images were painted in somewhere around 1900s. So people were asked, like, what do you imagine the future to be? They asked what 2000 would look like to people in 1900s. So let me show you these images. Type it in the chat boxes. What do you think is the corresponding technology which is prevalent today? Okay. Oh, I don't know how to. Yeah. How do I go to chat? Ah, cool. Yes, so I would like answers from you guys. What does this image look like in the present day? Movie. Be a little creative. You guys need to type, else I'll not be able to move ahead. Video call, perfect. So this image, somehow you can relate it to a movie that is being shown or to a video conference, live show, correct. So just imagine in 1900s, that is what people expected the future to be. Yes, we do have better video calls and 3D projections. That's okay, but this is what they thought it would be like. Okay, next. This one. Oh, we have moved to the next slide. Perfect. It looks like a vacuum cleaner, correct. This. Perfect. Aeroplane. Next. This is the best. I like this the best. Robots doing the work. Like, be creative, be a little creative. DJ. Torture room, come on, guys. Give me something good. Music, theater, okay. Let's not. Online classes, smart classes. Okay. So, can you see this man here who is dumping books in this whatever thing this is? Okay, I got the answers. Okay. So, now look at this man. He's dumping the books in this thing, and here this person is actually rotating something, and it is coming here through these headphones. This is like audiobook. Yes, perfect. Deep Street Dhande, that is an audiobook. So now just imagine what people used to think in 1900s. Yeah, look at this. So basically this is about the security features, right? And this, in the first Nokia phone, there was absolutely no security feature. Your mom, your dad, they could easily open up your phone, they could check the messages, they could check everything they wanted, right? It was scary. The next one is the touch, where you have to enter the passcodes. This is also still okay. Like, usually people are able to figure out what passcodes you might enter. Then we moved on to these where you have to have a pattern. Then we moved on to the fingerprint sensors, and now finally we have moved on to our face recognition, right? So this is how the development is happening nowadays. So in this presentation, since it's a weekend, I do not like to spoil weekends at all. So we'll have fun. There'll be nothing technical in this webinar. We'll not be talking about the color test for drugs or explosives, gas chromatography, mass spectrometry, nothing. We'll just be teleporting our minds to the future. We will think what would happen in the future. Okay, so let's have some fun. Let's make this weekend a bit better one. Cool. Now, the first thing in forensic science that is important is post-mortem interval. As of now, for people who do not know what is post-mortem interval, it is basically the time since death, how long it has been since someone died. Okay. As of now, we identify post-mortem interval based on several physiological changes that take place in the body, right? Algor mortis, rigor mortis, hypostasis, putrefaction. I think there are people who are from non-forensic backgrounds. So for those people, do not be worried about such weird terms. In the layman language, these are just the changes that take place in the body. Like, everybody, like, a body cools down after someone dies. So you can analyze how long a person has been dead based on these physiological indicators. Then eventually, because these things are like pretty variable, they are dependent on the clothing of a person, on the environment of the body, where the body died, whether it was inside or it was outside. So there are so many things that actually determine the post-mortem interval, that affect the analysis of post-mortem interval. So then we moved to entomology, right? We identify how the flies, they colonize a dead body. We study their life cycle, and that is how we come to know the post-mortem interval. But now we are moving a little ahead. So now we are doing microbial clocks. So simply, like, the way we understand entomological evidences, it has been claimed that in future we'll be able to identify the post-mortem interval based on microbial decomposers. It is said that after a body dies, even the microbes, they act on this body at particular interval. You would be able to isolate the microbial organisms, and you will be able to relate to a particular time. So let's say this is that chart. So let's say if you find pseudomonas, proteobacteria, you would be able to easily say that a body has been dead recently. There hasn't been long that the body died. So if you are able to isolate microorganisms, you can easily say how long a body has been dead. But the problem with this is Does the microbial effect on the dead body is affected by season? Like, will there be a change, whether it is spring, whether it's summer or winters? Again, has the body been moved? It also depends, like just in the case of entomological evidences, when you shift a body, the entomological evidences change, and that is how you identify how whether a body has been moved to a secondary location, right? Now, also the location of body, like whether you found the body in water or was it in soil, because there are microbes in the soil as well. So they would also interact with the body. So when all these things combine together, when you study these things, you will be able to identify the post-mortem interval, the presence of certain microbes, in what area of the body those microbes are present, what is the concentration of those microbes. So that is how it's gonna be in the future. Next is thanatotranscriptomics. Please do not be scared by such a long name. It simply means after we die, all of us, we think like after the cellular death, somatic death, everything ceases to work in our body. But there are certain genes that actually increase their expression once a person dies. I also did not know about this. I was reading through certain literature, and then I got to know that there are some genes that become active after a person dies. These are the genes that were present when when the fetal development. So these genes activate themselves. And if we study the expression of genes in particular tissues, you will be able to identify the time since death. So let's say if you are able to see this graph, can you see the boxes that are present? So now let's say there is this gene IFNG, that is what you have isolated from lung. The first box that you see, so if you are able to understand the expression of this gene and the expression is between 0.5 to 1, you can easily say that it has been almost 2.5 hours that the body has been dead. So based on the expression of certain genes in certain tissues, the amount of expression, you can easily identify the time that has passed since death. Again, the question in this is, does the expression of these genes change with the cause of death? Like if there was a drug overdose, does that affect these gene expressions? Or if it was a natural death, the expression of these genes change. So this is what we need to study, and we need to have a proper data to use this technique. Now next is human microbiome. This is pretty interesting. So all of us have trillions of microbial cells on our body, right? As of now, the research that is already being conducted, it is on the microbiome from pubic hairs or scalp hair, and it is being used in sexual assault cases. So, okay, I would just like to tell you guys one thing. The techniques that I have mentioned in this presentation, some of them are already under research, but they are not yet foolproof. They are not yet available to the public. Some of the techniques are far ahead in the future. So let's keep our minds open about it. So for microbiome, in cases of sexual assaults, when you are not able to find DNA, when you do not know how to identify the perpetrators, in such cases, you can actually have a microbial uh, you can have a microbiome that you can isolate from either the pubic hairs or scalp hair. So when you have sexual assault cases and you're not able to find the DNAs and you have absolutely nothing else to go forward, it has been said that every person has its own individual microbial flora and fauna. So in these cases, if you can isolate that microbial diversity, you will be able to characterize a particular perpetrator. So in cases, let's say there is a couple who stays together. Even they have their own individual microbiome. But if you try to isolate the microbiome of them, you will be able to find some overlapping between the two, which will show that they had some intercourse in the given period of time. And that is how you are able to use it in sexual assault cases. Also, the researchers are claiming that in coming time, everywhere we move, we leave a microbial signatures of us. So if you are able to scan that, it is possible that rather than depending on fingerprints or DNA or anything like that, your microbiome would be enough to identify you, because a microbiome, is dependent on the kind of lifestyle you have. It is dependent on what you eat, the kind of metabolism, the location you are at. So all these things help you to characterize a particular microbiome, and you have your own individual microbiome that can help the researchers to identify one particular person. Isn't it scary? Now, next is DNA from maggots in a burnt body. So, in cases where you are not able to find DNA or odontological evidences, it is possible that maggots, when they feed on the dead body, you can isolate the DNA of the dead individual and you can easily relate it. You can easily go for DNA genotyping and you can identify that person. Now, next, this is one of the scary techniques. This is DNA phenotyping. As of now, what we are doing is DNA genotyping, right? What we do is we have certain markers, we go for gene sequencing, and then you have a complete profile that you match with someone. But what happens in cases when the body that you find is unidentified? What happens when there is absolutely no one to match your profile with? In such cases, DNA phenotyping comes into play. So the researchers have isolated some markers. This is the name of the system. They have isolated 6 DNA markers that can identify blue or brown eyes. Eventually, they worked over their system. Then they were able to identify the hair color and skin color. And now they can even identify the sex and height. So what is happening is, just by your DNA, rather than going through the effort of gene sequencing or typing the DNA, they are creating a face. Right now, the face that they create is pretty average. They will not pinpoint to one particular person. But in coming times, it is being claimed that just by a single drop, the researchers will be able to create your entire face, so that they can, once they have the face, they can spread it in the media and they'll be able to identify who the person is. So this is how it happens. This is from an Australian research lab. This person is just taking a swab. Next, they insert it into the source of that particular machine. You just click on sequence. This is the result that you get. So can you see the red dot in between the purple dots? So basically, this is the ancestry results. The different colored dots represent different ancestries. The purple dot represent maybe European ancestry, and since the red dot, that means the person who has volunteered for DNA phenotyping, he falls in this purple dot area. That means he is of European ancestry. It's hardly a matter of 2 hours or 3 hours. You get the result quickly. Then it also gives you hair color results. Like, just imagine, it is so easy. It's giving you everything. You do not even have to interpret those different graphs that you get when you go for STR analysis. It's telling you directly that this is the probability of the hair color results. So see, it's 65% brown. There is absolutely no chance of being red. Then it could be black. So that's what I'm saying. So as of now, it's a very average field, but the researchers are still working on it, and they're gonna actually make sure that in coming time, you will actually have a face that everyone can identify. Similarly, in the right hand side, if you're able to see the color of the eyes, so even that is possible. And this is the final result that comes. You have a snapshot profile. So can you see the difference between the two, like the original photo and the profile that is generated? So that is why, as of now, you cannot rely on this field, but in future there is a high chance that it's gonna become really flawless and you'll get a perfect face from just a single drop of blood. Now, next is fingerprints. Personally, I do not know why we study fingerprints, because if the criminal is really smart, he should know to wear gloves. That's the basic thing. If you are becoming a criminal, you should know that the first thing that you do is wear gloves. But anyway, we will study fingerprints. So as of now, there are a couple of techniques that can easily isolate fingerprints, lift fingerprints, analyze fingerprints. But the most important thing that still is missing is age of fingerprints. Age of fingerprints simply means how long a fingerprint has been deposited on a particular surface. Okay, so let's say, for example, there is a, a lady died in her apartment. Okay, through CCTV footage, the police is able to say that there was a person who entered the apartment, let's say, one day before, and after that there has been absolutely no one who came in or went outside. His the lady's body was found out after, let's say, a day. Okay, now when the when the policemen analyzed the crime scene, they found fingerprints of this guy who came one day before. Okay, he has a very good alibi, but still the police suspects because there was absolutely no one who came in, so he's already under suspect. But if you can study the fingerprints, you will be able to say that it has been so and so time that the fingerprints were deposited. Like the last fingerprint that was deposited was, let's say, 12 hours or 13 hours back, and the death took place just recently. So that is why it is very important to understand how long a fingerprint has been there at a particular location. So there are several molecules or metabolites that are deposited, right? As you know, the fingerprints, they are because of a sweat, which contains a lot of metabolites. One of them is palmitic acid. That is the current molecule that is under research. So it has been said that it diffuses, like from the ridges of fingerprints, it diffuses down. So if you can study the rate of that diffusion, the amount of palmitic acid that has been diffused, you will be able to identify how long a fingerprint has been deposited on a particular surface. As of now, the researchers have just studied single fingerprints, like there are no 2 or 3 overlapping fingerprints to interfere, and they have only studied it on silicon surfaces. So we need to work on different surfaces, like let's say, is there a difference in the diffusion rates if the surface is metallic or if the surface is plastic? So these are the things that we need to work on. The next is fingerprint detection devices. This is pretty good because this technology that is written here, Lumidyne multispectral sensing technology, it basically identifies and lifts the fingerprint, but it also helps you to understand the surface on which the fingerprint is deposited. That is how this works. So for all those students who used to think, when you place Fevicol on your fingers, you remove it, and then you can use it for biometrics since your fingerprints are there. So this is where this technique will be used. You cannot use that because this technique will be able to help us to know that the fingerprint is not present on skin. It is on a completely different surface. Now we can extend this study to another dimension, like in explosion cases. If you have explosive residues that are present along with fingerprints, this will help us to know what kind of explosive residues are present without actually disturbing the fingerprint. Similarly, as we discussed, like we have several metabolites that come out with our sweat. So just if it's possible, like just with exposing the fingerprint to some technology, like let's say this technology, you will be able to identify the metabolites that are coming out of your body in the form of sweat. So in future, will there be a possibility that these chemicals become a signature of a particular person? Because again, it all depends on what you are eating, what is your lifestyle. So there is a possibility that these can serve as an individualization feature for you people. Next is laser scanning. So in this technique, what happens is it's basically based on laser ablation. Laser ablation is nothing basically when you expose a surface or a fingerprint to a particular scanner. What happens is the wavelength is such that it absorbs all the moisture. It affects the vibrations between hydrogen and oxygen bonds of water. So everything else goes away. So this device, it has several filters. Okay. And when you suck the fingerprint using a small vacuum pump, the DNA will be available in one filter. The metabolites can be taken out from the other filter. So this could be the level of sophistication. Like rather than working out, like putting in efforts to actually isolate DNA or to work on the metabolites, if there is a scanner that can actually have several filters, which can, isolate the metabolites that are present, metabolites in a different filter, DNA in a different filter, and the entire fingerprint in a completely different level. So it would be so easy. You'll be able to understand, you'll be able to study all these different things individually, making our work pretty easy. Then microbial studies, as we discussed, like all of us, we have different microbial flora. Similarly, when we deposit fingerprints on a surface, along with the fingerprints, our microbial flora and fauna is also deposited. So if we know how to type these microbial organisms, we can easily individualize a person. And again, for meat or vegetable eater, like as I told you, the metabolites that are secreted in our cell, in our sweat, they can easily help the researchers to identify what kind of person he is. He can be a meat eater or a vegetable eater or a vegan. So this can help us to narrow down the list of suspects. Okay, so can you guys tell me what this looks like? Sorry, yeah. How do I see the chat? Yeah, post-mortem, perfect. So as of now, like it's very difficult to, perform autopsies, right? Because there are several cultural issues when we cut up a dead body. Like dead body is considered to be really sacred in almost all the cultures. And also, like if you perform an autopsy, you go for post-mortem, after certain time, you do not have the evidences left with you. And there has been so many cases where the evidences turn up pretty late. You cannot say, that you did not take any post-mortem sample, or we do not have the body now, we cannot perform the analysis, right? So now what is being done is people are going for virtual autopsies. So this was the project that was started by University of Zurich. They started with virtopsy, that is virtual autopsy. So it's very easy, the dead body just passes through a CT scanner or an MRI machine. This machine scans your entire body in 3D. Everything that your body has, your muscles, your nerves, your bones, every single peculiarity is being monitored, it is being scanned, and it is converted into a digital form. So this is how it looks. So this body is not original, as you can see. This is just for simulation purpose. It's going through that white hole, that is the whole scanner. There are several cameras, and this is how you can actually view the body in real time. So it becomes really easy, if you have to study some pathological changes that are happening in your body, rather than cutting through the body, you can just look at this image. Many times if you find let's say decomposing bodies, putrefaction is there, it becomes really difficult to you know visualize if there were some wounds, if there were some injuries. So it becomes so easy when you have a digital format like this. You can easily zoom in and check for any fractures that are available. So this is how as of now we understand the trajectory of bullets. Like we have probes. So if you think that this is the trajectory, you insert a probe and you check for the direction of that bullet. But in such cases, it's very difficult, if the bullet ricocheted or like it went some other direction. But if you have virtual autopsies, it becomes so easy to identify the direction the bullet traveled, whether it caused fragmentation of the bullet. Even if there are some wounds, it becomes so easy to identify the kind of wounds that are there in the body. Like in this image, there is a wound here on the skull. The size of this wound can also be identified without worrying about anything else. You can identify what is the size of this wound. You can match it with some weapon used that could be used, let's say a knife. So rather than actually inserting that knife in this wound, you can, without affecting the body, you can actually do all these calculations. And on the top, if you can see, like you have options whether you want to view the full body, you want to view just the skull, or you want to view the rib cage. So you can have several filters. Then on the left, you can see external or skeleton. So it moves, like if you want to see just the outer projection, or you want to go inside, look at the veins, the muscles, the tissues, what is the damage that is being done. And the best part is, since everything is in the digitalized form, it becomes so easy to share all these things with other researchers or other investigators. So many times, especially in our country in India, the forensic lab is not comprised of everyone. Like we have to use a forensic pathologist to understand the injuries that might have taken place. We need someone from physics background to understand about the bullet trajectories. So rather than collecting the evidences and sending to all the different people, we can just share these autopsy results. They can give their opinions. So it becomes really easy to communicate with even different investigators. Now comes the very important part, crime scene investigations. Now you guys tell me, what do you think should be the development in investigations so that it becomes easy for all of us? What do you think? Just imagine in your head, like if we are 30 years down the lane, what do you think would be the developments in crime scene investigations? Drones, perfect. We'll be covering that. Okay, don't say anything that's already present in this list. Yes, I need answers. Web camera, crime scene preventions. Okay, what else? CCTV, drones. So, okay, the biggest problem that we have, okay, Google Maps, scene scanners, artificial intelligence. Now you guys are talking. Cool. Geolocations, quality professional. Okay. Psychopath. What do you mean by psychopath? Evidence, preventions, portable kits, fast tests like strips. Perfect. Okay. So you get the idea. So now robots. All right. Good. So the biggest problem that we have as of now in crime scene investigation is like we take so much time in management of that crime scene that many times the evidences lose their value. So how good it would be, like rather than going through all the pain of collecting those evidences, you can just have crime scene portable kits. Like you can just take those little bags. There are some kits in it. You just take those little kits to the crime scene and you can perform your analysis right there without worrying about the collection of evidences. So let's say, for example, there are handheld electronic sniffers which can directly detect drugs. You do not have to go through all those color tests that we do for identification of drugs. You can just, ask someone to breathe out in an electronic sniffer and you can directly get the answer that this is the kind of drug that the person has consumed. It would be so easy. Similarly, what if we have flashlight detectors? Like they can replace the breathalyzers or a person who's driving under the influence of alcohol. So now if any of you have drunk and drive at night, especially in Delhi. So if a police constable stops you, if you guys have drunk and drive, there is a possibility that you can easily dodge that police person, right? They do not they do not go through the effort of actually following you. They just let you be, fine, okay, go. Okay. But if we have flashlight detectors, even if you dodge a particular policeman, they will be able to detect it with just a flashlight that can be mounted on a pole or something, and they can alert the next signal. So at the even if you dodge at one particular signal, the police will be able to catch at the next signal. So that is the kind of development that could happen. Then next is microfluidic chips for DNA. These are being used now, and they are being used at quite a lot of places. So what happens, I'll give you a very brief idea because this is a very interesting technique. If anyone wants to learn about this, you can contact me separately. We cannot cover the entire thing here. So in a very simple language, there is a very little chip. You just have to put a drop of blood, and within few hours it gives you the answer. Like, it gives you the markers, it gives you the entire profile. So it becomes really easy. Like, when you do not have to go through the PCR technique and everything, like, it is so much problematic. Like, when I used to perform DNA typing, it was like you have to make sure there is no contamination, then you have to pipette so many different kinds of things, you had to incubate. Like, it was such a pain to isolate DNA and go for genotyping. Then you had to make those gels for gel documentation. Again, next level of effort it was. So how would it be to, skip this entire thing and just pour a drop of blood on a particular chip and it will give you the answer directly? Next, we have near infrared light scanners. So they can image your entire vein structure. Before we do this, it is important to know whether the vein structure of our body is individual. So let's say if you have three suspects, a CCTV camera had recorded the vein structure of a particular person, and when you are there in the interrogation room, this scanner can actually scan the entire vein structure and match it with the one that the CCTV camera had captured of the suspect. So it becomes really easy. You do not have to go through the polygraph test or anything. You can just scan the human body, you can just scan the vein structure, and you can match it. Now, this is a very important technology. So in coming slides, we'll be discussing with different equipments that we use, and every equipment will have a modification of this LiDAR technology. Like, if we have an equipment that is just used for sensing some odors, so this technique can be customized to just sense the smell. Okay, so basically what happens, this technology has several filters, several lights like UV rays, visible rays, all the different spectrum. And when you expose a particular surface, you are able to identify the kind of surface, whether it is metallic, non-metallic, the kind of evidences, whether it's blood, or are these some explosives, some drugs, or in cases of fire, what kind of accelerant was used. So it can directly identify what kind of evidences are present. And you can even map the crime scenes. So if you use this technology in drones, this technology will help to bring the entire crime scene in a digital format. Then it can also identify faulty construction material. I'll show you the image. So this is how the LiDAR technology gives result. This is currently, like, this is the very basic form of it. And we are expecting that in future, the image would be perfectly the way the individual scene is. It would not be in the form of this. Now, this is a building under construction. If you are able to see in the top right corner, there is a certain blue colored thing, right? So this technology helps the researchers to understand the faulty materials used in construction. So rather than analyzing different samples from different locations in, let's say, a bridge, you can just expose that bridge to this technology, and this will give you an entire image with different colors, and you can directly know where a faulty material was used. So it can save so many lives. Now, the next is that we were talking about is drones, like for the identification of graves. So the students who have studied anthropology or even the basics, and even for those who have not studied for anthropology as of now, when you're digging graves, it is not just, excavating stuff. It's not just digging a hole. It's a very tedious process. You have to, if there is a grave, you have to divide it into small, small squares. Then you take out the soil, you filter it through meshes, and everything that you collect, you have to photograph. So just imagine in cases where there are mass graves, like it would be such an immense effort to actually go through the effort of excavating every single thing. So these people look happy. It's not at all a happy thing. Like this, you have different uh, areas marked, and then you keep filtering the soil that you get. So rather than going through this process manually, you can have a drone that has this LiDAR technology. And when you expose it in a particular area, it will be able to tell you whether a particular location has some graves or not. As of now, we have these technologies. This is a ground penetrating radar. So we are a little developed now. So basically you take this machine and you go through an area, and can you see the monitor kind of thing in front of the hand? That is where you get the results, whether there was something beneath the ground. But even with these kinds of instruments, you have to have a person that will take that instrument around that entire ground. Like again, it's a painstaking effort. You need a person. These equipments, they are not light, they are heavy. So we need something that will, that will just make us lazy. That's it. So what we can have is, we can have driverless cars or robots. We can just tune them, we can send them, and they can, with this LiDAR technology, and they can easily identify. You do not even have to worry. You can connect these robots or cars with a software on your screen or on your tab, and you can actually view what is there below the ground. So it becomes pretty easy to identify graves. Then is odor sensor. So many graves, they even release some smell. Decomposition sets in. There is smell that comes out, and that is how many a times dogs are able to identify some graves. So these cars or these robots can be fitted with LiDAR technology that is customized for sensing some smells, and that is how you can easily identify the graves. Now we'll go with drones specifically. So it becomes easy when you have a huge crime scene. Let's say there is a disaster that took place. How difficult it would be, when you have to uh, click photographs of the disaster scene. Like just take an example of a train wreck, a train accident. How much pictures will you take? How many pictures will you take? How will you videograph all the entire crime scene? It becomes really difficult. And then taking all those videos back to the lab, analyzing those things. So now what we can do is, we can just have drones that can give you an aerial view of the entire crime scene. It becomes pretty easy. So in traffic accidents, it can be used. Many times what happens, whenever an accident takes place, the roads are usually blocked, and they remain blocked for a very, very long time. Like the investigators will come, they will document the entire crime scene, they'll make all the sketches, they'll have to collect the evidences. So it's a very long process. Sometimes in disasters, it can take days. So rather than spending or wasting so much time, you can actually have drones that can record, that can map the entire crime scene, and it can bring it back to you. Now see, in this image, the drone has captured an accident. The image was relayed back on the computer, and right there you can actually mark where the car might have turned, where the skid marks would be, the tire marks would be. So it becomes really easy for you to analyze an accident. So this is a simulation that took place. There is a person who gave an introduction on the app, the software that can be used in drones. So this is that application. The application in itself, you can measure the distance between the car and the victim if available. So this is how you have a drone. It can map the entire crime scene. This is a simulation, okay? This is not a real crime scene. So this is how you can collect images. You can have different videos. They all can be combined together to actually make a 3D model. Then as you can see, you can have a 2D map if you want. You can have a 3D model of the entire crime scene too. Next is plant health and elevation. It's very important. You know, there are some people who say that my car has been parked here since really long, like it has been months that have not moved, and the truck came and hit me. But if you study the plant health, if the car was not moved for really long, the plants that are present or the grass that is present below the tires would be different as compared to the surrounding area, right? So you can easily say based on the plant health whether that car was moved or not. So you can easily mark like the location. There are options for distance, the area. Like you can blur the surrounding area and just focus on the crime that you need to work on. See, they can mark the distances. Again, the same, you can use drones for identification of graves. We discussed this already. Now next, this one is like pretty interesting, virtual reality. I hope you guys know what virtual reality is. If you guys have gone to, like, there are so many malls these days. They have those virtual reality big glasses that they make you wear, and then they take you through different roller coasters. So you are right there standing in the mall. You are just wearing that and you get the feeling of being in a roller coaster ride, isn't it? So in cases of crime scenes, how good it would be, like especially for students. When we tell students like you have to survey the crime scene, you have to go through the strip method or the zonal method, all those kinds of methods. If we actually show you the crime scene, you can actually know how you go about the surveying of crime scene. Then we can even have the main person communicating with the people around, right? It becomes so easy if there is, let's say, a crime that took place and you have to show it to the court. So rather than making the jury understand what happened, you can have the entire crime scene created and then you can present it in front of the court in the form of virtual reality. In these cases, you can even have a demo how a crime occurred. You can show it in the form of a virtual reality video how a crime could have taken place, like a person shot from here and this is how the victim got hit. One of the most important thing is perspectives. Now let's say there is a lady who was on, let's say, a fourth floor, and he said that I saw one person coming out of this house, okay, and that person is under suspect. If you can create a virtual reality scene, then you can easily say that it is not possible for this lady to actually view someone coming out from the house because, let's say, there was a tree which was blocking the view. So it becomes very important to have perspectives whether a particular witness could have actually seen whether a crime took place or not. Okay, so I'll show you a 2 minutes video. It's pretty interesting how virtual reality works. Let me check if it works. Yes. Perfect. Can you guys see?
Not it, ma'am.
Now can you?
No.
Is it visible?
Not visible, ma'am.
Why it's visible? Okay, never mind. Let's skip it because I think we are running out of time, right?
Yes. Still, we're having next 20 to 25 minutes.
Yeah,
20 minutes.
let's move ahead. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll send you the link. I'll share it on the chat. Okay.
Sure, ma'am.
Now this is the most interesting part, the augmented reality part. I hope all of you know what this is, the Snapchat filters. Everybody uses it. Like you have different kinds of filters that you can use to enhance how you look, right? So this same thing can also be used in forensic science and in a very interesting manner. I'll give you some examples of augmented reality. I hope this you all know. Pokemon Go, the famous game. And I don't know if this having animals in your living area happened in India or not. But here in US, especially after the lockdown started, the parents were like really frustrated because the kids did not know what to do. So this was an app that was created where you can actually have animals come right there in your living room through augmented reality. So in augmented reality, if we use it in forensic science, what happens is usually, whenever there is a crime that takes place, the investigators do not go on the crime scene. Usually the first responding officers are the police people, right? So it becomes difficult because these people do not really know what are the important evidences. So they can actually have a camera that relays back the image to the labs, and the people in the lab can help these the police officials to understand which is the important evidence, what to collect. So here in this image, there is this person who is wearing different equipments, and this image is being relayed back to different research labs or the investigating labs. And these arrows that you're seeing, these are being shown by the people who are sitting back in the lab as if, this is important, this is what you have to collect. Like here. So you get the different victim, suspect, you have here the blood marks. So basically the crime scene is right there in front of you. It's actually present there. And these are the things that pop up in front of you. Like this is what you have to collect. Like here it's written like you have to inspect blood. Similarly, if you find some bullet, you can readily scan it. You can send that scan data to the lab. There they can perform the matching, and right in front of you, you will have the answer. So like this, like if someone sends me on an explosion case to investigate an explosion case, now I have never personally handled any explosion cases. So I know theoretically what happens, but my knowledge as compared to someone who has experience of handling explosion cases would be pretty low. So I can easily relay back the entire scene to that particular person, and through augmented reality, he can actually mark the crime scene in front of me and tell me the things like here there are gray oxides, so you can collect it. This is a particular rust, so you can collect that. It could help in the investigation. So that is how we utilize augmented reality. Now, if you have to show particular trajectory of a bullet, you have a real crime scene in front of you. Through simulations, you can actually fire a gun and it will hit a person. You can say whether this was actually possible or not. It is possible for you to analyze if the bullet fragmented. So you can study all these things right there in front of you with respect to the crime scene. Like you do not have to even imagine a crime scene. It's right there in front of you. Now, do you know this guy? So this is Yoda, I think. Yeah, Yoda from Star Wars. So this is a hologram. So what happens is, just imagine if you can create holograms in front of the jury. Like you can actually depict the entire crime scene. It would be like a theatrical performance, right? You are actually showing a suspect, a victim, how a particular crime occurred. It would be so much easy. Now, 3D scanners, these are something which are being utilized as of now. But if you use them in a very proper manner, they can actually help you to reduce the work very easily. So what happens, there is an entire crime scene. You can just place these scanners and they can scan the entire crime scene in a 3D model. So this is the original way how you document a crime scene, right? You sketch. It is a very difficult, it's a painstaking effort. You're going out in the sun, you are managing, you are marking the distances, the directions, and even if a single distance goes wrong, your entire crime scene messes up. Then you transfer it to the CAD, you again digitalize it. It's an effort. So with the scanners, you can just place those scanners in a particular area. These scanners can relay back the image in an entire 3D form. See, and if you have very advanced scanners, they can actually mark what happened. They have like inverted cone patterns in case of explosion. Here you can easily mark directly, like there probably was a body here. These are the arms, the head, everything is easily annotated. You can have 3D models too. Now, this is very important thing in anthropology. Like there are times when in cases of fire, the evidences are like pretty fragile. So rather than using those evidences, you can just scan that, let's say skull. You can scan that skull. A 3D model would be developed. You can give a command to print that 3D model, and then you can study, let's say, the wound patterns, the injuries, the bullet injuries, and it becomes so easy to understand what might have happened. You can reconstruct a skull. Like if you just scanned the entire part, then you can easily go through the different processes to reconstruct just half of the skull into a complete one. Now just imagine if you can just scan a particular evidence. Let's say you found a body which is in a very decomposed state. If possible, like you can just scan it and it will convert it into a hologram. So it would be like pretty interesting to see like a dead body is being converted into hologram, so you can have an entire crime scene right in front of you. Next is artificial intelligence, which is already being used, like especially in cyber security, we go through all these things. So nowadays, like uh, we have several satellite tracking chips, something like this. Like for the criminals, you just tie it around the person so that wherever he moves, you can easily identify where the person is moving. Nowadays, these chips are being inserted inside the criminal, and you will know, like this is something that the criminal can easily remove, right? But if you insert it inside the body, it becomes difficult, and then you are able to easily know where the person is moving. So I'm moving a little fast now because we are out of time. Okay. Then like behavioral patterns, like just imagine in Dhoom 2, if you remember, Abhishek Bachchan, he created an A pattern, right? What to identify the next location. So with artificial intelligence, you can actually create these patterns. You do not have to put your brain how it's going to work. The artificial intelligence, it runs through the different options that are given. It has an algorithm. It goes through everything, and it will give you a pattern of particular behavior. Similarly, it can be used in facial reconstruction. You do not have to take the effort to actually put these pins. If I'm pretty sure none of you might have done facial reconstruction as of now. It's a painstaking effort. You have to remember some 100 and 150 points on your face. You have to put pins, then you put clay. It's a painstaking effort. So you can just scan and run the algorithm, and it will directly give you the face. Now it can be used in anthropology also. So do you see, like initially we used to use such kind of weighing balances, right? With time, here you had to keep the evidence and then you have to measure it. There were a lot of human errors. Then we moved to these digital scales where you do not have to worry about even understanding what the weight should be. It directly gives you the weight. So similarly, you can use these features, like let's say for sex identification, you have to understand what kind of bones it is, and even then it is very difficult to differentiate between a male and a female bone. There are a lot of overlapping characters. Similarly for ancestry estimation, stature estimation, there are like so many formulas. If you have found, let's say, femur, you have to use one of these formula, and before you use this formula, you have to know the racial the ancestry of a particular person, whether male or female, and then you use these formulas. So it's a really painstaking effort. Then in order to identify age, you need to study these long bones, the distance of these, the length of these long bones. So all of this is like really you cannot rely on all these things. So what if in coming days, in coming future, there are some scanners that can directly identify the bones, the kind of bones, or let's say if you have to identify age, you just have to expose this bone to a scanner. It can measure the distance or the length of this bone and directly give you that it corresponds to a particular age. So it becomes really easy. Similarly, for pathology, if you find a bruise and you expose it to a scanner, you can easily identify how long the bruise has been there, what is the stage of that bruise. So it becomes really easy to know what might have happened, how the bruise might have occurred. Now, this is something that is happening here quite a lot. Predpol is a software that is being used by police to know where crime can take place in future. Like the crime has not yet taken place, they're already taking measures to know where the crime can take place. So they have this software, they run that software through algorithm. The software understands the locations where the crime takes place, where the next crime could take place, and it alerts the police where the next occurrence could have been, and the police can easily like reach that particular place. Then we have this happens in Chicago. Like they have a strategic subject list, like a location, a particular location where a criminal could be staying. So they have an algorithm which can tell you a location, an area where a particular, where the number of criminals are high. Next is the linguistic fingerprinting. It's pretty good. Like if you guys have read Harry Potter, you know, like it's a famous book. J.K. Rowling also wrote this book, The Cuckoo's Calling, under another name, Robert Galbraith. So there was a question who had written this book. So if we run the book through certain algorithms, the algorithm studies the making of sentences, how frequently someone uses some words, whether they use difficult words or simple words, and then they are able to come up with a conclusion that this particular book was actually written by J.K. Rowling. Similarly, you can use algorithms to identify handwritings or signatures rather than, you know, marking those points, understanding it, doing all the statistical analysis. So this is where artificial intelligence really come into play. Even in paintings, you know, if every painter has its own characteristic style in which he or she paints, the kind of colors a person uses, so the algorithm just runs through that particular painting and it will give you a result whether that particular painting was actually made by the original person or is it a fake. Even in toxicology, so you can actually have an app rather than going through all the effort of going through preliminary test, the confirmatory test, color test, GCMS, everything. You can just have an app where you put in the data and you can come to a conclusion. So this is an app that was designed by one of my uncles. It is used to identify whether a snake is venomous or non-venomous. So I'll show you how it works. It is just a simple screen. You just enter. You have to enter the age of the victim, because a lot of the physiological changes that happen because of these toxic compounds, they are determined by the age. So that is what you enter. You enter whether you are a male or a female. Then they have very basic questions like, in case of snakes, whether the fangs are single or double, how much is the distance between the fangs, what are the condition, like if there is a local pain present or not, is there some edema. Lot of questions, like almost 20-25 questions are there, and at the end you get the output, like the species is non-venomous and the effect could be severe, not severe, and the kind of species or the kind of snake that is there. So you even come to know the snake that could have caused that particular the infection. So this is how it becomes really easy. Similar you can do for drugs. Like you can just have an algorithm that can ask you to feed in the data and you can get the name of the drug. This is pretty interesting. Iron sniffers, like rather than going through GCMS, you can just have some iron sniffers kind of thing which you expose the crime scene to. They can just zoom into a particular evidence by analyzing the ions that are present in it. Like if there is a bullet, the scanner can identify, and on your screen it can just zoom in, like this is where that bullet is present. This is something that is very interesting, and this came out of my daydream when I was thinking what can be done in the future. So the biggest problem that we guys have is collection of evidences, maintaining custody. Like it's a task, you know. Every time we analyze the evidences, at the end of the day, sometimes you just get to hear that the evidence was contaminated, stuff like that. So how good it would be, like you can just scan a particular evidence at a crime scene, the scanner identifies the evidence, and accordingly it can print a box, a collection box, a 3D print of the collection box. Like when you have to collect blood, you have to make sure whether you have to use those gray caps or purple caps depending on the kind of analysis that you have to do. I could never understand the concept of those different test tubes. Like why not have a universal solvent that can, you know, use it can help us to perform all the analysis. So there are a lot of technical things in that, but still it was such a pain, you know. So how good it would be, you can just scan it, a 3D box would come out, and for the chain of custody you have fingerprint sensors or facial recognition, rather than, you know, writing your name, scanning, time, date, lot of effort. So you can have all these things and the entire data will be stored electronically. It would be a fun thing. Next is scent ID. Like every person has its own peculiar smell, right? So how does this scent, if is it possible to, you know, identify this scent, to characterize this scent, it would become important. This is one of the movie Inside Out. It was based on emotions, like how your emotions are located in different boxes in our brain: conscious memory, subconscious memory. So just imagine if a person is dead, or even if a person is alive, if through some technique you can actually extract the memories and play it in the form of a video. So it saves us all the time of going through the investigation. You can actually see how it occurred. So basically, the future is gonna be a paradise for lazy people. Like you do not have to do anything. You have to just run a particular thing to algorithms. Now, don't worry, this is the last slide. So the most important thing for all this development is having proper funding. Until unless we all have funding, the researchers do not have funding, we cannot do anything about it. These are the movies that I would recommend you guys to watch if you are interested. Then these are the books that you can read. All are very interesting books. Some are based in future, some are completely on psychological forensics. Now, the last thing, that is what I want to leave you guys with. If we were talking about 2050 and all the developments, do you think that in order to commit a particular crime, the person would have to be present there? Even the criminals will advance themselves. They can also send things through drones. So how the forensics will change when the criminal is not even present at a particular crime scene? So this is what we need to think about. So that is it. With this, I end the webinar. I can take the questions now.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And here it is the time for question and answer session. So our first question, ma'am, if there is any dead body and which is dead due to the case of poisoning, so in that case, in the case of means if you'll go for virtual autopsy, so is it possible that how we can detect the poison?
Okay, so the thing is, in cases of virtual autopsies, you are able to see the physiological changes that are taking place in the body. Let's say if there is a change in muscle, the toxins that affect the muscles, you will be able to see if there is an atrophy to the muscles, if that particular toxin affects the bones, what are the changes in the bones that are taking place. So the thing is, all these things are not going to replace the original, the manual autopsy completely. This would be a method to help with the regular autopsy. So for toxin analysis, you just need a small visceral organ through which you can identify. You do not need to cut up the entire body. So you can actually have a little blood, let's say, and you can analyze. So that is how you can go about. Like we are not replacing the regular autopsies completely as of now.
Okay. Then here is the next question. There are so many problems in storage of evidences. So, transportation of evidences, there are many chances of degradation, alteration, and destruction.
Right.
So, what can be done in these cases? Means, is there is any advanced technique?
Yeah, that's what I said. Like the last thing that I told you guys, how good it would be that but if you can right on the crime scene, you can actually create the collection box in a way such that it will preserve the integrity of an evidence. Like if you're collecting blood, automatically you will have the kind of collection box or an envelope that would help the blood to be stable. Like you do not have to worry about whether it has EDTA in it or not. You can just put in like this is blood, and that is, and right there you'll have a collection box which can preserve this blood during transportation.
Okay, thank you. There is another one more question. So, as we know, because of this COVID-19 pandemic, the sanitization would be taking place in daily lives.
Hmm.
So, then how we can use the microbes in our forensic study for the future?
Okay, I would like to ask you guys one question. Whoever asked this question, what do you think how long this sanitization will go on? Like even now, people are not even following lockdowns. So let's skip the sanitization process. Before this year ends, I'm pretty sure none of us would be worrying about sanitization anymore. This would become a part of us. Even if we are going through sanitization, there'll be a lot of things, like even if you are questioning about the microbes thing, how much will you sanitize? If there is a dead body, how many times will you come and sanitize that dead body? Like once you have sanitized, after some time, like after a day or two, the soil will interact with that dead body and there'll be new microorganisms. Of course that would affect the analysis, but still, like you will always find some or the other evidences.
Okay. And there is one more question. Do you think that because of advancements in forensics, crime will be reduced in the future?
um I think it can go either ways. So I'll give you one example. Just few days back, my husband was really frustrated with me. So he said that I really want to kill you. Then my best friend, she's like, do not just kill her like anything, because people will obviously suspect you the first thing, it's lockdown. She suggested him, like, why don't you insert this kind of drug in her? Because then this drug is not detected in the bloodstream. She saw this in some random web series that is being shown on Netflix. So as time, like as we go ahead in the future, the techniques that we develop, that would help us in investigation, but the criminals will also develop themselves. Like you can see it in the movies. Boom 2, when you look at Boom 2, the kind of crime that had taken place in that was completely different as compared to some old movies where the crime was in a very basic stage. So even the criminals, they develop their techniques. It is, everything is balanced.
Okay. Do you have time for one more question now?
Yes.
Yeah. So, is it virtual autopsy is possible in India?
Of course it's possible. Why not? And I'll tell you something. When I had started working, one of my colleague, like I had worked with one of my colleague, I think you guys know Amol sir.
Yeah.
We both had worked and we had written a proposal to actually start virtual autopsies. It's very easy, you just have to have CT scans and MRI machines. They are present in so many hospitals. So if the labs have these two machines, they can actually go for virtual autopsies. It requires initial investment, no doubt, but it gives you the returns very easily too. It is possible. Like, why not?
Okay. So, thank you so much, ma'am. It was very nice session.
And also, I would
Now,
like to say, like, I had to rush through the slides in the later part of the presentation. If any one of you has a query, you can like mail me. And I had to, oh wait, I had to give you the link of that, right? Wait, let me just type the link. Yeah, this is
okay.
the, oh, sorry, I think I sent it to everyone. Yeah, this is for the virtual reality thing. And there was another video I wanted to show you guys. It is how models are converted from 2D to 3D. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Done. Okay. So now we are at the end of this session. Now it's a time for vote of thanks. Gratitude is the most acquisite form of courtesy. I am expressing my sincere gratitude towards today's resource person, Miss Shraddha Nyati ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your valuable information. It was the best use of this time during this lockdown. I would like to propose my hearty thanks and gratitude to all the participants of today's webinar. Thank you for your interest. I would like to express our profound gratitude towards our beloved secretary and correspondent, Line Dr. K. Retinam sir, Director R. Durai sir, Principal Dr. P. Balaguru Swami sir, Academic Director Dr. N. Markender sir, Vice Principal, Professor U. Natarajan sir, Deans of various affairs, heads of all the departments, and each member of administration and management of GTN Arts College, Dindigul, for their valuable supports and guidance. I am also thankful to our technical team for their valuable efforts. I am also thankful for all the colleagues of GTN institution for their valuable assistance. Here is an important announcement. Those who have registered for this webinar, they will get their certificates on their registered mail ID within 1 week time duration only after submitting your feedback. Again, tomorrow on 5th of July 2020 at afternoon 2 p.m. IST, we'll be having our next session on the topic Why Psychology in Forensics by resource person Dr. Sumedha Zadav, Head Department of Forensic Psychology, Government Institute of Forensic Science, Aurangabad, India. Thank you so much. Stay home, stay safe.
Thank you, Krishna. Thank you, GTN,
Yeah,
for having me here. And have a happy weekend, everyone. Thank you.
yeah. Thank you so much.